The invasion began quietly. People went about their lives, unaware of the silent fleet that drifted above Earth's atmosphere. Then, with a sudden burst, the sky split open as alien ships pierced the clouds. They glowed with a strange, cold light, humming in a way that sent shivers down spines. The streets were flooded with people staring upward, fear and wonder mixed on their faces. The leaders of this alien force were calm, smug even. They had seen planets like Earth before, hundreds of them. To them, Earth was primitive, barely evolved, an amusing little world that hadn't yet touched the stars. They were the conquerors of worlds, and Earth was merely another name on their list. With their advanced technology, they assumed Earth would offer no resistance worth mentioning. In their towering command ship, the alien overlords observed Earth's first attempts at defense. Military jets launched, anti-aircraft missiles fired, but to the aliens, it all seemed like toy soldiers trying to take down a giant. A single flick of their shields, and every weapon Earth had sent their way fizzled out, crumbling to the ground, leaving nothing but smoke and debris. They watched, laughing, as Earth's leaders tried everything they could think of, throwing weapon after weapon at them, but nothing left to scratch. For the alien leaders, this was a show. They leaned back, observing screens filled with images of Earth's failed attacks, entertained by the humans' desperation. They saw Earth's military bases mobilizing, saw tanks rumbling across fields, saw jets streaking across the skies, and it amused them to no end. "These humans," one alien leader sneered. "They still fight with metal and gunpowder. How quaint." What the aliens didn't know was that among the billions of Earth's inhabitants, one figure was watching them as closely as they watched Earth. A lone soldier, hidden and silent, observed the alien ships through a pair of binoculars from the cover of an abandoned building. A green beret, a specialist in survival and tactics, trained for situations exactly like this. Unlike the generals planning their attacks in bunkers, he didn't have any illusions about beating the aliens head-on. He knew he'd need to outthink them, to use what little he had in ways they'd never expect. As he watched the alien forces parade through the skies, his mind was already racing. He wasn't thinking of missiles or guns. He was thinking of something different. He knew alien technology was beyond anything Earth had. Their ships floated effortlessly, deflecting every attempt Earth's military had made. But technology wasn't everything. He understood patience, and he understood the value of knowing the enemy. He knew their kind. He could see it in their faces on the screens, in the way they sat smugly in their command center, expecting no resistance worth their time. As he observed them, he began to pick out small details. They seemed sure of their strength, almost cocky. They flew in tight formations, as though no one would dare challenge them. He noted their patterns, the timing of their movements. They had a schedule, and they seemed to repeat it without variation. In their arrogance, they were predictable. And predictability was a weakness, one he could exploit. The Green Beret spent hours in the shadows, making notes, forming a plan. He remembered his training, his years of experience in hostile territories, where the terrain was unknown, the enemies countless, and help non-existent. This wasn't so different, he thought. They were a stronger force, yes, but they were predictable, set in their ways. And that, he knew, could be their undoing. His equipment was basic, just a few tools, binoculars, a radio with limited range, and some supplies he had gathered from what remained of a deserted store. The aliens wouldn't expect him. They wouldn't understand the lengths to which he was willing to go, nor would they anticipate the tricks he was about to use. To them, humans were weak, easy to control. But this lone soldier was about to show them that even the smallest resistance could shake a giant. He crouched in silence, hidden by shadows, as he went over his plan, refining every detail in his mind. He knew he had to strike quietly, unexpectedly, to make them question what they thought they knew about this world. He would show them that Earth was no simple conquest, and that humans, when pushed, would fight back with everything they had. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city, he knew the time was coming. The aliens saw Earth as a challenge without risk, a planet waiting to be claimed, its people no more threatening than insects. But they hadn't met him yet. They hadn't seen what one human, driven and unbreakable, was capable of. The Green Beret checked his watch, his mind steady and clear. The aliens had the numbers, the technology, and the advantage of surprise. But they didn't have him, someone who would never back down, no matter the odds. The governments of Earth acted swiftly, mobilizing every available force in an attempt to counter the alien threat. Military bases hummed to life as jets scrambled and ground forces prepared for a confrontation on a scale they'd never faced. Tanks rolled across city streets, missiles were loaded, and Earth's best technology was aimed skyward, ready to meet the intruders with full force. But the alien ships hovered calmly, unmoved. They watched Earth's attempts with cool, mocking detachment, a slight irritation rather than a threat. At the first sign of attack, their shields shimmered into place, casting a nearly invisible barrier around each ship. Earth's missiles, no matter their speed or size, disintegrated upon impact, bursting into harmless sparks. High-powered bullets, bombs, and missiles alike failed to leave a scratch, clattering off the shields like pebbles against stone. In one cold, calculated sweep, the alien overlords began dismantling Earth's defense lines. From their command ship, the alien leaders observed the chaos below, mildly entertained by humanity's efforts. "They still use projectile weapons," one remarked, amused. "They're like children, flailing with sticks." The entire invasion had been, for them, a trivial task. Their ships moved in flawless coordination, sweeping across the globe, neutralizing military bases one by one. Jets that attempted to engage were shot down in seconds, leaving nothing but trails of smoke in the skies. The aliens took special pleasure in watching as some of Earth's best pilots attempted maneuvers only to find themselves completely outmatched by the aliens' speed and precision. For the people on the ground, panic spread quickly. News broadcasts captured the helpless attempts of Earth's forces, displaying footage of cities under alien control, military outposts flattened in seconds, and national landmarks crumbling. Each attack was met with the same result: alien ships untouched, moving through the destruction as if they owned the skies. Civilians began to flee, while others looked for shelter, hoping desperately for some miracle. But even as the panic grew, the aliens seemed unbothered, continuing their assault with a calculated calm that only deepened humanity's despair. The alien overlords communicated in their strange language, issuing orders without hurry or stress. Their confidence was complete. Earth's forces were nothing more than insects to them, scurrying in futile attempts to survive. The alien leaders' smug smiles and easy laughter revealed their total certainty in their own superiority. They saw this invasion as a task that required no more than routine. To them, Earth was just another acquisition, and its people, though numerous, were weak and defenseless. They had no idea that anyone might consider resisting on a different level. In the midst of this overwhelming power, one soldier moved unseen, slipping through shadows, carefully watching the alien forces at work. The Green Beret, observing from hidden locations, took in each detail: the ship movements, the timing, the patrol patterns. He had no backup, no heavy weaponry, and no advanced tech to level the playing field. What he did have, however, was experience in knowing how to spot patterns, how to adapt, and how to fight with whatever he had on hand. While the aliens mocked Earth's resistance, he made note of every weak spot, every moment of overconfidence. He watched their patrols loop back the same way each time, noticed the predictable sweep of their ship's scans, and memorized their timing. The Green Beret understood that fighting them head-on would be suicide, but he also knew their strength was their biggest weakness. Overconfidence had made them careless. They believed Earth's defeat was inevitable, a done deal, and they'd overlooked the threat a single, determined soldier could pose. As Earth's main defense lines collapsed, the Green Beret began his first steps toward a counterstrike. He worked alone, far from the military's crumbling front lines, with no reinforcements, and no hope for direct support. This was his world, his people, and he would defend it. He scouted key areas, setting his own traps in advance, using his knowledge of the terrain and his ability to move unseen. The aliens had never encountered tactics like these before. They expected armies, heavy artillery, full-scale attacks, things they could anticipate and overpower. What they didn't expect was precision, patience, and a relentless spirit from one individual who refused to accept defeat. He tested their responses, making small moves at first. A minor explosion here, a sudden blackout there. Each time, the aliens responded with force, sweeping areas thoroughly, but finding no one. The soldier had them chasing shadows, a ghost who attacked without leaving a trace. With each action, he took note of their response times, how they communicated, and how quickly they adapted. He was laying the groundwork for something bigger, forcing them to spend resources on what seemed like minor disturbances. Back in their command center, alien leaders began to notice these small disruptions, though they were far from concerned. "One human causing trouble?" One laughed, brushing it off. But the Green Beret wasn't just causing trouble. He was studying them, learning from their reactions, and gathering information for a larger plan. He wasn't just any soldier. He was trained for survival in the worst conditions, to think outside the box, and to act without fear. Earth's standard forces might have failed, but his mission was different. He wasn't just fighting for Earth, he was fighting because he knew he could make a difference. As alien forces continued their sweep, unaware of his intent, the Green Beret blended into the chaos, hidden in plain sight. The aliens' laughter and mocking words meant nothing to him. He had no intention of taking them down by force, at least not directly. His was a mission of endurance, of cleverness, of making them think twice. He knew that even the most powerful enemy could be beaten if they didn't see the threat coming. The Green Beret made his first move. He didn't need powerful weapons or high-tech gear. What he had was the element of surprise and the skill to use it. He slipped into position, his focus sharp, his plan precise. His first target wasn't the ships or the shields but the smaller devices and equipment the aliens relied on. He understood that disrupting even a tiny piece of their operations could send shockwaves through their entire system. His first act was a quiet one, an attack they wouldn't expect. He sabotaged a key supply relay, using tools he'd crafted from salvaged materials. To the aliens, this was an anomaly, a minor blip on their systems. But it was enough to force a response, to make them divert resources to investigate. This wasn't about immediate impact. It was about understanding how they operated, how they prioritized. Every response gave him a new piece of information, a clearer picture of their weaknesses. Moving through shadows and rubble, he struck again. This time, he targeted a power junction. The effect was immediate. Systems flickered, lights dimmed. Alien crews scrambled to restore order, their calm confidence shifting as they realized something, or someone, was interfering. The Green Beret watched from a distance, studying their reactions, the urgency in their movements. He could see their frustration, hear the tension in their voices. They were no longer indifferent. They were aware, if only vaguely, that something wasn't right. As the hours passed, his tactics evolved. He began setting traps, small explosives triggered by motion, designed to cause confusion rather than destruction. Each explosion was a whisper, a nudge, a reminder that they were not as secure as they believed. The aliens grew cautious, their patrols more frequent, their movements more guarded. They no longer strolled confidently, they moved with hesitation, scanning their surroundings. The Green Beret had changed the rules, shifted the balance of power just enough to put them on edge. His approach was relentless, precise. He hit them where they least expected, at moments that disrupted their routine. He didn't need to engage directly. He made them feel his presence without ever revealing himself. In the aftermath of each strike, he watched as they stumbled, adjusting their defenses, trying to predict his next move. But he was always one step ahead, adapting faster than they could comprehend. His unpredictability was his greatest weapon, and he wielded it with precision. With each passing hour, the alien overlords' frustration grew. They deployed more forces, dedicating entire squads to finding this phantom, causing their troubles. But the Green Beret knew how to blend into the environment, becoming invisible when he needed to, using the terrain to his advantage. He was a ghost, impossible to track, always leaving just enough evidence to let them know he'd been there. He moved quickly, efficiently, targeting infrastructure, communication lines, and command posts. He wasn't just fighting, he was dismantling their system from the inside, bit by bit. Every disruption was calculated, meant to force them into a reaction, to draw them out. He turned their strength against them, using their advanced technology as bait, knowing they would rush to protect it, to restore order. He understood the psychology of his enemy, recognized their arrogance and their growing fear. Alien Command, once so calm and dismissive, was now a hive of activity. Orders were barked, units dispatched, protocols doubled. The Green Beret had achieved what Earth's entire military couldn't. He'd made the aliens feel vulnerable. They could no longer ignore him, but neither could they catch him. Each time they thought they had him cornered, he slipped away, leaving only the ruins of their equipment behind. His strikes grew bolder, each one closer to their core operations. He wanted them to know he wasn't just an isolated nuisance but a deliberate, strategic threat. He could see the cracks forming in their confidence, the way they glanced over their shoulders, wary of what might come next. This was more than resistance, it was psychological warfare. He was planting seeds of doubt, undermining their sense of control. The aliens deployed their elite forces, troops designed for close combat, skilled in tracking and neutralizing threats. But these soldiers had never faced an enemy like him. They moved in formation, sweeping through areas with advanced scanners and high-tech weaponry, but he remained out of reach, always a step ahead. He knew when to stay hidden, when to strike, and when to disappear, leaving them frustrated and exhausted. He continued pushing them further, disrupting their resources, creating more chaos. He targeted their food supplies, their water reserves, anything that would make them uncomfortable, anything that would remind them that Earth was not theirs. They might have the technology, but he had the advantage of knowing the terrain, understanding how to survive on limited resources. He was patient, methodical, stripping away their comforts, their certainty. As the alien overlords watched the reports, their initial amusement was gone. They realized that this lone human was not just a threat, but a symbol of resistance. He was defying them in ways they hadn't anticipated, challenging their assumptions about humanity. This was not an army, not a nation's defense, it was a single, relentless force, unyielding, unstoppable. His tactics weren't about brute force but strategy, adaptability, and an unbreakable spirit. He was showing them that Earth wasn't just a planet to conquer. It was a place with people who would fight, who would stand their ground, no matter the odds. He was a reminder that strength wasn't only in numbers or advanced weapons, it was in the heart, in the will to survive and protect what mattered. As the Green Beret moved silently through the city's ruins, preparing his next strike, he knew that he had achieved something invaluable. He had shaken them, made them question themselves, and shown them that Earth's spirit could not be crushed easily. His war was far from over, but he knew now that they feared him, even if they would never admit it. The alien overlords had grown furious. This single human had disrupted their plans, humiliated them, and made them question their grip over Earth. They decided that he could no longer be ignored. High Command issued new orders to eliminate this persistent threat. Elite alien squads, trained for tracking and eradication, were deployed with one objective: find and kill the Green Beret. They scoured the city ruins, their movements tight and controlled, weapons at the ready. They deployed their most advanced sensors, fine-tuning every piece of equipment to detect the slightest human signature. The Green Beret remained elusive. Despite their powerful equipment and well-coordinated sweeps, he slipped through their lines, leaving them frustrated. He avoided detection by studying their patterns, moving at the right moments, and leaving only subtle traces that misled them. He understood that if they cornered him, the odds would not be in his favor. He had no illusions about his chances in a direct confrontation with such advanced forces. So, he focused on staying unpredictable, using his knowledge of survival and misdirection to evade them, while staying close enough to monitor their actions. Their frustration grew. Hours of searches turned up nothing. Each time they thought they had located him, they arrived to find only empty space or a cleverly placed decoy. Every false lead drove them to further caution, forcing them to spread their resources thin, checking and rechecking their paths. The Green Beret used this to his advantage, exploiting the slightest signs of weariness or impatience in his hunters. Their every misstep, every moment of frustration, became a part of his strategy. He understood the value of letting them feel they were close, only to have the target slip away at the last moment. Meanwhile, Alien Command received constant updates, growing increasingly agitated. This one man had shifted their focus from global control to personal revenge. They couldn't understand how he avoided their technology. To them, this was a question of pride. They had never faced such resilience from a lone, unassisted human. This wasn't supposed to happen. Their forces were designed to dominate, to crush resistance swiftly. The Green Beret had turned their certainty into doubt, and doubt was dangerous in warfare. The elite forces grew paranoid, cautious to the point of hesitation. Every shadow, every flicker, became a potential threat. They began to fear ambushes even where there were none, slowing their movements and weakening their focus. The Green Beret observed this shift, understanding that their fear and frustration were now his allies. They were reacting not to a real threat, but to the one they imagined. He had forced them to second-guess, to question their own strength. The tables had turned. They were no longer hunters but the hunted. With each passing day, the alien force's confidence eroded further. High Command continued to send reinforcements, each new wave equally baffled and frustrated by the elusive human. They expanded their search perimeter, but this only left more gaps in their coverage, which he exploited. The Green Beret began targeting these weak points, launching small, calculated attacks that drained their energy and kept them off balance. He avoided direct combat, relying on hit-and-run tactics that left them chasing shadows. As reports of failure continued, alien leaders grew desperate. They realized their elite units were struggling, operating in constant tension and fear. Morale was dropping, and it became clear that something had to change. So, they issued new orders to intensify the hunt. They deployed even more troops, focusing every available resource on capturing or killing him. But each escalation only played into his hands, stretching their lines thinner, making them more vulnerable. The Green Beret seized this moment to turn their desperation against them. He set up ambushes that forced them into narrow passages, areas where their numbers became a disadvantage. He knew they would chase him blindly, driven by their orders and their bruised pride. He lured them into traps that delayed and disoriented them, forcing them to waste time and resources. By now, he had achieved more than mere survival. He was actively weakening them, forcing them to drain their own strength in a fruitless pursuit. The alien overlords, watching from afar, struggled to understand. Their forces were trained for complex warfare, equipped with technology beyond human comprehension. Yet here they were, unable to catch one man. They had lost the psychological advantage, and with it, their unity. Orders became contradictory, some pushing for caution, others for aggressive pursuit. The Green Beret, sensing this internal conflict, exploited it further. He targeted isolated units, picking them off in quick, silent strikes, further destabilizing their operations. At this point, their pursuit had become a nightmare. Every decision seemed to backfire, every strategy met with failure. Their sense of superiority had been shattered, replaced by a realization that their assumptions about humans had been wrong. The Green Beret was no longer a mere target. He had become a symbol of defiance, a reminder of the limits of their own power. Even as they intensified their search, they began to lose faith in their own abilities. Paranoia took hold, eroding discipline among the troops. Some questioned why they were chasing a single human when their objective was the planet itself. Others feared that he was setting them up for something larger, an ambush, a trap they couldn't foresee. This fear became their undoing, as they hesitated at critical moments, allowing him to escape yet again. In the end, the Green Beret had accomplished more than survival. He had forced them to confront their own vulnerabilities, to realize that even with superior numbers and technology, they were not invincible. Their focus had shifted entirely, their goal reduced to stopping one man at all costs. But the cost had grown too high, leaving them exhausted and unsure. The hunter had become the prey, and they were left questioning their purpose, their strength, and their own survival. The Green Beret knew it was time. He had studied the alien movements, observed their responses, and exploited every weakness. Now, he prepared for the final confrontation. His goal wasn't just survival but a decisive strike to shatter their control. Every move he'd made had brought him to this moment, forcing the aliens into a vulnerable position. They'd underestimated him, grown careless in their frustration, and now he would make them pay for it. He set his trap in an abandoned urban area, one he'd scouted extensively, familiar with every street and alley. The aliens, focused solely on him, had no idea they were walking into his carefully laid plans. They moved in, methodical but weary, exhausted from their endless pursuit, ready to capture their elusive target. Yet, as they advanced, they found only silence and shadows. The Green Beret had predicted every step they would take, guiding them into a space where their technology would be as much a hindrance as an asset. The alien troops proceeded, scanning and double-checking every corner, their nerves frayed. Then, one by one, small explosions disrupted their formations, pushing them further into confusion. The blasts weren't random. They were precisely placed, aimed to herd them into a specific area where he had set his final ambush. Each explosion further eroded their confidence, showing them that even now, they were not in control. As the alien squads converged, their advanced tech began to fail. Communications faltered, devices malfunctioned, and their shields flickered. He had carefully sabotaged the environment to disrupt their systems, using every ounce of his knowledge to turn the battlefield to his advantage. The aliens were left bewildered, unable to rely on their once unshakable technology, forced to confront him on terms they hadn't prepared for. In the midst of this chaos, he struck with precision. He engaged them in swift, brutal strikes, targeting leaders, disarming groups, and retreating before they could counterattack. Their fear was palpable, their movements uncoordinated as they scrambled to regain control. For the first time, the aliens found themselves forced into a position of pure survival, reacting with desperation rather than dominance. The Green Beret had broken their composure, turning their arrogance into dread. The alien commanders, witnessing the collapse of their forces, realized the depth of their failure. They'd thrown everything at this lone human, only to watch as he dismantled their ranks with skill and determination. Their once flawless tactics had fallen apart, and now they faced the painful truth: their technology, their numbers, and their superiority had not been enough. The Green Beret had revealed the limits of their power, exposing the flaws they hadn't even known existed. With their ranks in disarray, the remaining alien forces began to pull back, retreating from the battlefield in a desperate attempt to regroup. But he didn't allow them that respite. He pursued relentless, turning their retreat into a rout. Each step backward cost them more, as they left behind equipment, abandoned their wounded, and struggled to escape the relentless force that had once been only a shadow. Now he was everywhere, and they were trapped. The final alien leaders, cornered and defeated, issued the command to retreat from Earth entirely. Their arrogance shattered, they fled, leaving the ruins of their invasion behind. They no longer saw Earth as an easy conquest but as a warning. One human had forced them to confront their own vulnerability, to realize that power alone could not guarantee victory. They left, their confidence broken, their mission a failure. As the alien ships vanished from Earth's skies, the world began to emerge from the shadows. The Green Beret, unseen and unnamed, had become a symbol of resilience, of humanity's ability to stand against impossible odds. He had done more than defend Earth. He had shown that even in the face of overwhelming power, one individual's courage and determination could make all the difference. The alien overlords, returning to their distant worlds, carried with them a lesson they'd never expected to learn. Earth was no mere conquest. It was a place where even the smallest force could defy them, where strength was more than technology, and where a single human could change the course of a battle. Their invasion had failed, not because of armies or weapons, but because they had met a resistance they could neither predict nor control. And as they retreated, they knew that the memory of Earth, and the Green Beret who had driven them away, would haunt them.